back to our topic about first gen students, I've taken that and tried to put that question within a couple different frameworks. First, I'm using the PEO framework, and I chose that framework in this context because I'm interested in I see that there's a lot of qualitative work here, and this idea of exposure rather than an explicit intervention, I think, is a better match. And here's how that looks in a research question. What impact does involvement in freshman learning communities, that's the experience or the exposure, have on the success, which is our outcomes piece, of first generation college students? That's our population. If we knew there was a lot of quantitative data and we knew we wanted to do a meta-analysis, the PICO model may be a little bit better, where then we ask, what does participation in a freshman learning community, that's our intervention, have on academic success? Now I'm being a little bit narrower here in my outcome, on the same population with a control group, the folks who did not participate. And you'll see there's a few differences here. One important thing is that I added freshmen to the learning communities. In my exploration of the literature, I realized that a majority of the learning community research is specific to freshman learning communities. I'm seeing that that's where the biggest investment in higher ed is happening in terms of learning communities. And I want to be able to, in my findings, be very specific in my assessment of this type of learning community. So I've decided to be narrower in my definition there. In the first one, I keep success really broad. I'm looking at qual work. I feel comfortable in my synthesis to discuss different measures of success and how that looks. I may be interested in including some psychosocial outcomes more than just academic. And this approach gives me a slightly bigger view of what success is, and that's easier to do qualitatively. And in the second one, I specifically said academic success, and I'll need to define what that means. That means, for me, perhaps the measures, the quantitative measures of GPA, time to graduation, retention rates, things that I can capture in terms of numbers and synthesize in terms of numbers. And because it's quantitative and because I want to have this more clinical approach, it would be great if I included a comparison. Can I find numbers to compare with students who did not participate in a freshman learning community? What you'll see I did do with all of these is leave out the PWI element. I wasn't confident that there would be enough data or enough studies where I could truly identify the demographic context of the institution where these studies happened, and felt like in the end it might be a stretch to make that conclusion or generalization. So that piece is missing from both of these definitions. What I want to stress here in my last minute is these definitions are really up to you. How I define academic success, how I define a learning community. The key is to compare apples with apples and then explain why they're apples. So I may, in a study about math anxiety, interventions for math anxiety, decide to call third graders through 12th graders apples. I'm going to call all of those, all of the folks in that age group, people I can compare and explain why. That may be something about the curriculum and the level of math learning. It may be something in terms of development. There may be a variety of reasons why I say I don't want young children and I don't want higher ed. And that's okay. If I've decided those are my apples, that I can compare those things, and that's my definition of students here, that works, as long as then in your protocol you can explain what you mean by that piece.